let me start my talk by asking for permission. And permission is because I intend to take all of us on an exciting journey. A journey into the past, a journey into the future. But to make this journey more enterprising and attractive, we'll only look at the next 48 to 50 years. And hence the operating year for today is 2070 AD. 2070 AD. And the good news about 2070 AD is that while I'm not sure about myself, and I say this in lighter vein, I'm very sure that most of you would then be still kicking and bright and around. But on a serious note, why should we charter a journey into unknown and uncertain future? Why are we interested in the next 50 years? The reason is that for disruptive technological changes, for example, synthetic or artificial intelligence in our case, typically takes 2 generations of time to create sustainable impact, good or bad, across societies and communities. And hence, to evaluate the impact of AI on the idea and spirit of humans, humanity, and human belongings, 50 years down the line looks like a fair time period, right? I don't know, I am continuously remembering this famous Persian poet, Omar Khayyam, today. And he once very famously said, when I want to understand what's happening today or try to decide what will happen tomorrow, I look back. I think this is a good poetic inspiration for us also to look back, to set up some perspectives. And roughly around 3.7 billion years ago, something very profound happened. And this was the initiation of life in formats of single-celled microbes in an environment full of poisonous methane and devoid of oxygen. And then around 2.4 billion years ago, cyanobacteria came to the party and started to make food using sunlight and creating oxygen as a byproduct. And this creation of oxygen, firstly as a byproduct, paved the way for more complex, organized, multicellular format of life. And henceforth, the march of life was unstoppable. And the journey and dance of evolution was more sharper and synchronous until around 200,000 years ago, our distinguished illuminist, Homo sapiens, arrived. And it's not ironic if I tell you that Homo sapiens is a Latin word, which actually means wise human. So what is it that makes us wise and human, and if I may add, intelligent? From an evolutionary point of view, it's the human brain which does so, differentiating us from other species and acquiring outstanding cognitive capabilities. For example, creativity, abstract thinking, logic, language. And all of this happens because brain is a very hungry organ. It consumes roughly 20% of our calorific input, and it has always used this energy to offset the evolutionary pressure, optimizing its size to the right size, tweaking not 98.8%, but just 1.2% of its DNA to stay efficient. And most importantly, staying flexible, plastic, by firing, forging, and interconnecting the 100 billion neurons that it has, thus making human mind and human brain the most efficient and experiential learning machine on planet Earth. It's kind of also surprising that it's the same human brain which acquires and applies knowledge and skill, created its own alter ego, the artificial intelligence. A scenario where machines and computers will first work, then learn, then reason, and finally and possibly think like us. And mind you, these machines will be driven by humongous quantum computing power and humongous memory, which on a linear scale will be millions of times better than us. And hence there is a very strong possibility that AI will not only equate human intelligence, it will also surpass it. And when that happens, the terms that we use is superintelligence, which is linked to the machines, or the more popular term is singularity. And this term singularity is when machines finally overtake us in intelligence. Now I'm aware that the big cynic in me and the cynic in some of you is already saying this. You know what? This is science fiction. How can machines surpass human intelligence? This is some story of a novel. The guy is reading too many books. I get that. And the quick hint that I want to give to this big cynic in me is that I have not forgotten that I have emerged from a single-celled microbe, and I have seen the dance of evolution, and I've seen the progress of technology in the last 30 to 40 years, and henceforth, very quickly, the futurist in me takes over and asks me to look at fundamentals as to why this can happen. So the question that I want to propose today is that, why can all of this happen? And here is the answer. As humans, we look at data and information, then apply logic, maybe memory, sometimes experience, to solve problems and create decisions, right? Now, if we simplify this, dissect this, this looks like a typical input-output mathematical theorization, where at the center of the activity is the biological neuron or the nerve cell, right? In AI, we have what we call a perceptron, which is a mathematical model, and if not a replica, but an approximation of the biological neuron. A perceptron is nothing but a computer algorithm or a computer program which maps its input, multiplies it by a learned weight coefficient, and generates an output value. In machine learning also, it's a computer program for supervised learning of binary classifiers. And to simplify this, when these multiple perceptrons or computer programs stack up in a very logical manner, the ensuing network is what we call a neural network. And it imitates the behavior of the human brain by allowing the computer programs to look for patterns and create qualified decisions. And hence this term deep learning, which some of you already hear about, is nothing but a higher format of machine learning, wherein the neural network is encouraged to imitate human intelligence. I think it's also now good time for me to bring in the classical subjects and discuss. And let's start with physics, my favorite, by the way. And we quickly understand that the impulse of a nerve cell in a human brain operates at a speed of 100 meters per second. For the bright among us, maybe 120 meters per second. Whereas in neural networks, the electrical fields which are associated operate in the range of 50 to 99% of the speed of light. For perspective, speed of light is 3 into 10 raised to the power 8 meters per second. This is lightning agility. And hence, please don't get surprised when you hear that computer programs went on to defeat the world champions in chess or more complex board games like Go. Let's maybe go to Boolean algebra. This is the science of 0 and 1, the language that computers understand. And there is always this argument that in human decision-making process, there is this tinge of experience, judgment, while in AI, the decisions are still narrow, and there is this tyranny of 0 and 1. In short, the argument is that AI cannot read between the lines. Here is something that I want to mention you vis-a-vis intelligence. Intelligence typically is a function of computing. And human intelligence is a function of interconnected, serial, and parallel processing and computing, and this is how our brains operate. And with the advances in quantum computing, wherein the Newton's law has already overtaken the Moore's law, the capacity of the computers to compute enhances at a doubly exponential rate. And very soon, the neural networks will not only decide like humans, but it will be better than humans. And with the same tinge of experience and maybe some humor also. And why humor? Because when men and women will understand that machines are better than them, they may not like it, and maybe then some machine humor is also needed. Let's also look at biology. The time span of a neuron is limited. And once the neurons die, they cannot be replenished. But with perceptrons, yeah, it's a matter of competence. You can create them anytime, anywhere, and they can live forever. And finally, let's look at design. Yeah, an obscure subject, but which I just love because they can solve the topics not only of planet Earth, but of the universe. And in AI, we can design these hidden layers between the input layers and the output layers. And in these hidden layers, magic happens because machines learn in these layers through the techniques of self-learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. With all the science that we see, it's very safe to predict that the future of machines is very bright. Now, with this background in mind, and I know this was a bit heavy, at least for me, let's take a telescopic view of 2070 AD, 48 years down the line. And while you can quickly calculate how young you will be then, I can tell you that the shape of life has changed forever. And hence, I once again invite all of us for a peekaboo into the year 2070 AD, and this is how this can possibly look. We see manufacturing robots in every factory of the world. Self-driven or autonomous cars pumped by the AI algorithms. Predictive, preemptive, and genetic healthcare system where now we are printing organs on 3D printers. Aging as a concept has been solved, disease almost defeated, and you can possibly decide when you want to die. Corporate offices are with digital lakes, and pleasures of life, for example, travel, is now only conducted in higher versions of metaverse. And schools, colleges, and universities are no more physical buildings like this, but an IP address of a mammoth cloud where copious resources of learning can be shared very equitably. We have now this social contract between humans and humanoids are these pleasant-looking robots with facial expressions and emotions, and they are now very talented, and they work in our homes, in our offices, and in our industry. And they have rights, they have human rights, they have voting rights, they have citizenship rights. And to supplement them, we have these super intelligent bots now, part of every connected device, connected building, connected infrastructure, making the application and meaning of life profound because they make life very easy for us. Something very interesting will happen on something which all of you like, social media. Social media by then would be owned by no one. And there would be this ultra hyper fragmentation of identities, and your profile then in 2070 is a heady concoction of your physical, digital, virtual, augmented, real, fake identity, triggering disruption and creating new business models and social models. And topics like currency and sensitive topics like love and belonging will also change forever. Paper and paper currency would have disappeared. We have now satellite-based 10G or 12G in vogue, and streaming is now multidimensional on plasma displays made of nothing but air. And we have this big disruption also in the food industry. And in 2070 AD, on that special day of yours, let's assume a Friday evening, with or without friends, when that personal humanoid of yours gets you food on that invisible fiber plate. By the way, food you can see, the food that you see is cell-based food, healthy. But surprise, surprise, as sumptuous and tasty as it is today. And this is driven by AI, I mean the food industry disruption, but also helped by the topics that we already hear today, sustainability, circular economy. And also, what will happen in a controversial manner is that babies can be ordered to our specifications in the stem cell labs in our city, thus redefining the relationship between man and woman. In 2070 AD, AI will touch the facet of every life. And with decisions being made on big data, metadata, predictability, algorithms, it is expected that policy making and performance management is more structured and hopefully inclusive. By that time, it's the AI which will decide who gets the next job and when the next typhoon comes, much before it actually comes, thus saving life and property. Is this not a good part of AI? Of course it is, and in line with 4 principles of bioethics: justice, autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence. How would it not be fair if I don't tell you that there is a tough side of AI as well, and we as responsible human beings have to solve it? There is a chance that if AI gets coded on considerations of inherent human bias and prejudice, such an AI can destroy human collaboration and make us lonely, lazy, and boring. Such an AI can also destroy our social connections because it can inextricably make us independent, thus compromising the already compromised values of equity, ethics, and empathy. With such AI capable of unleashing thousands of need-based bots and robots and humanoids, and with already compromised identities, societies and communities can become a pawn in the hand of some super algorithm. So what is it that we can do now, today, in coming days, to avoid this from happening? what we can think of is a two-box solution. And the first box is to set AI free, like we do with markets, and assume that self-correction and self-regulation will seep in. However, this is a bit radical, but debatable, because when we invented fire and then the risks associated with fire came up, we were able to quickly engineer a fire extinguisher and we mitigated the risks. With AI, it may not be possible to make such an extinguisher. Because if the values and goals of AI systems are not aligned to the values and goals of humans, it will not be possible for us to tame AI, because it will be this heady mix of infinite super intelligence, and the worst part is because it will be all networked. If that happens, then AI can do to us what some of us very shamefully and insensitively do to animals and make them endangered. In that sense, not to scare anyone, AI could be the last innovation of humans, because post-singularity, it's the machines who will decide what to invent next and what to innovate next. And hence, this solution of setting AI free may not be a smart idea, right? The second box of the solution is to set the rules of coding now and make the rules more inclusive, ethical, and value-based. Because by now we understand AI is what the coding is. The term algorithmic bias has to be addressed. And minorities, socially disadvantageous classes, deprived strata have to be given a fair share when AI decides on questions of impact on the basis of only quality of the data set it sees and not on the basis of some political or non-political pressure. We have to create institutions, expert systems, quality gates, so that the innovation in AI is only leading to security, dignity, legality, privacy, solidarity, prosperity, and the final call on the implementation of AI has to be left to the humans. I underline this. The final call of the implementation of AI has to be left to the humans. If the values of AI system, ingrained and driven through coding, is aligned to the positive gains of humanity, and even if then machines take over, it can only mean ease and abundance for us. Ease and abundance. And to realize this, we have to hardwire ethics in our coding culture, in our coding behavior, in our coding education. And a possible framework can look like this. The AI systems of future should get aligned to a predefined ethical design code. Second, regulatory setup should continuously evaluate the implications of AI as it goes on to replace the traditional societal setups. And finally, the codes of conduct, certifications, and standards of ethical coding should be enshrined professionally so that the integrity of the algorithms are not compromised. Friends, there are no easy answers here, but we as responsible and intelligent human beings have to solve it now, not for our own sake, but for the sake of future generations. Thank you.